Um, sometimes podcasts are Nepo babies. Yeah, that's it. I've been doing a lot of work on this episode series. So this episode series that we're going to be working on is all about AI and how are all of us healthcare providers being sprayed with a fire hose that we are expected to understand but don't have any time to do that. So the only person I could think of to bring on and talk to you about this is Aaron Miley. Notice that we have the same last name. This is my husband, Aaron Miley. He is an IT security and compliance expert within the healthcare space. So it wasn't just that I could bring you a cybersecurity or a healthcare compliance person. I needed to bring you somebody who truly understands the crossover between these worlds and be able to break it down for all of us who did not go to school for an engineering degree. So thanks for doing this for me, honey. And for those of you who don't know you, can you share your background and what you do in cybersecurity or in IT compliance and healthcare?
Of course. My name is once again Aaron Miley. I'm an IT security and compliance specialist or expert, however you want to put it. I've been in IT and cybersecurity, IT and security, for a little over 20 years now. I've worked in most major industries, so banking, manufacturing, retail, and I've spent the last almost 10 years in healthcare. My current role, again, I deal with IT security and compliance. So, for the layman, that is more, I'm working within like government regulation, insurance regulation, all of that. So when you hear like HIPAA compliance, as a practice owner or someone in a practice, you probably had that training. I'm usually one of the people that helps develop those trainings, as well as make sure that we're complying with the training as well. And then all the little pieces behind the scenes that most folks don't see.
Yeah. I also want to point out to the audience, because there's a lot of background information, not only just from our 17 years marriage, but we owned a group practice together. I am no longer a group practice owner, only a solo practice, but you have direct experience within the therapy practice space and not just healthcare as a whole.
Yeah. Specifically, I spent 5 years not only managing like the business aspect of a mental health group practice, but also the IT systems that were involved in that, since I had already experience with it. And then just through osmosis, I became a HIPAA compliance security expert and, PCI DSS, which is the payment systems essentially. So if you have a thing that takes a payment, that's PCI.
Absolutely. We're just going to jump right into it because there's a lot of ground to cover here. This is why this is going to be a series. I wanted you to come in to get the technical side and help break down the technical side for those of us in healthcare. So why should therapists, counselors, and other healthcare providers even care about AI and cybersecurity or even any of the compliance stuff right now?
Because it cares about them.
Yes.
Threat actors. So, we use the old term of hacker, but the reality is that, now AI is involved, and AI is not really a hacker. We can't quite define it yet. But threat actors are using AI to build very detailed and personal attack vectors to do one of three things: steal information, steal money, or destabilize organizations and governments.
So that's, you broke that down really well. And I may ask you while we go through this to break down some of the language, because as every field does, we all have our own jargon, and you probably have more familiarity with our jargon than in the therapy world than many in the engineering world would. So can you give us, I'm going to ask you for a 101 for a healthcare provider. Can you explain in non-jargon terms what AI is specifically the kind of AI that's being used in our EHR/EMR systems?
So it's better to define what AI isn't right now, and
Mm,
what companies have marketed as AI or artificial intelligence is not artificial intelligence as we would define it in any other sense of the word. It doesn't think, it doesn't reason. Uh, what it is a large language model. So it's more like predictive technology that can smush together patterns or words into patterns. It recognizes as responses that we prefer. That's the kind of the oversimplification of what we currently have.
mhm.
Um, so prime example is ever noticed that when you go into Chat GPT, Claude, Grok, or Gemini, and then ask it what it thinks about a thing, and then it takes the context you asked the question in and mirrors it back to you.
Yes.
So like an example would be, it's not just blank, it's adjective blank. So
Ah,
when people use
okay.
it for like therapy reasons, right? So they help process maybe feelings in it. And I don't think it's a bad tool for that, but I think you have to go in it understanding that it's only going to reflect what you're feeling at you because it doesn't feel. It just takes what you give it and smashes it back out.
So you're kind of describing almost like a, a fast version of Mad Libs, really, in some ways. Like you're describing something that it it really does sound like AI, this idea of artificial intelligence, is a marketing for something that this isn't at all. So,
Yeah.
and you and I have talked about this many, many times. They market it as artificial intelligence when they are actually large language models. So,
Hmm.
what are large language models or LLMs, and why should providers understand they're basically in and out machines that can't give you anything that you haven't given them?
Like I said before, LLMs are really good at smushing words together into patterns that we find pleasing. Um,
Mm,
so providers should understand that LLMs, or what they're marketing as AI, but I'm going to use the term LLM because it's the accurate description of what we're talking about. Um, it's only going to take in what's given and reorganize it back at the user. So users are you and me. We're the
mhm.
people who use the technology. They can help you. So LLMs are really good at helping you organize data into known patterns, like a SOAP note. That's a
Yes.
fantastic example. You have to give it enough data in your prompt to do that. Otherwise, it'll just fill in the gaps of what it thinks you want. So again, garbage in, garbage out.
So if it is an in and out machine, you're making the point that if you are feeding it stuff that is just unhelpful, not factual, uh, even if it has pattern recognition, if the information is bad going in, the information is bad coming out. So eh, I mean, this makes sense why why all of us healthcare providers should be really, really concerned about our people using these
Mhm.
models unsupervised without a healthcare provider. We have some very early research to show that some of these models can be used effectively by healthcare providers in augmenting their medical services, but it's with the supervision of a healthcare provider. A lot of people, I mean, Sam Altman, who is the head of OpenAI, said that the number one use of AI right now is essentially therapy like talking back and forth. So
Mhm.
I'd love to hear some of your concerns about the risks of that from, I mean, obviously not from the healthcare provider side, but maybe the risks of what we don't know because of what we don't know about these models themselves.
So kind of to reiterate your question back at you a little bit, you were asking what we should be aware of when using these tools, correct?
Essentially, yes, because our people are going to be use them with or without us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we already see it in just about every industry right now who has attempted to adopt like an AI model of some kind, whether regardless of how they're trying to use it at the moment. I think the biggest thing to be aware of is that, again, it can only give you what you give it.
Mm,
So if you say, write me a SOAP note on a patient who has a generalized anxiety disorder. So here's your language back at you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll create a SOAP note and it'll create it with all the key fields of what it recognizes as a general anxiety disorder because it's
Mm-hmm.
ingested all that data. And so when you ask it something, it'll reference everything and find what you're looking for. But if you just tell them, if I literally say, create a SOAP note for me about a patient who has generalized anxiety disorder, and I give it nothing else, it will give me a very nice sounding note, but it'll have no specifics from your session. It'll have no information. So you can fill that out yourself if you want, but it won't have any context beyond you want a SOAP note about this diagnosis.
Mm.
So it'll miss it won't capture any nuance because you didn't give it enough information. So that's dangerous because again, it's just recognizing patterns and filling in the blanks. Um, I think ways to protect ourselves or that clinicians can protect themselves, let's be real specific, is that you need to give it more information to work from. And you can do that
Mm.
without missing like a HIPAA compliance thing, right? So the two factors within HIPAA is that does it contain personal health information and does it contain personally identifying information? As long
Mm.
as you scrub your prompt of that information, so let me give a better example, right? Help me create a SOAP note about a patient with generalized anxiety disorder. Ask me questions to help you fill in this note. Only create the full note when I've given permission to do so. Now it'll ask
Mm.
more questions of you so that it can fill in the blanks without just making assumptions.
Mm. Without
You can
making up the
also,
information about the session itself.
yeah, because again, it's the training data that it's ingested. It will know the pattern of a SOAP note. It'll know what it's supposed to look like. It'll know what data it's typically supposed to contain. And then it can infer questions to ask you based on that information.
Mm. So essentially you're giving more language to create more context.
Mhm.
I think that we're kind of talking around what when you don't give these language models enough information, it can have something called a hallucination, and not a hallucination in the sense of what we in the healthcare space call a hallucination, which is about a human and a human experience. But a hallucination is essentially just making shit up. So these hallucinations that are within these LLMs or AI, they can be really dangerous in our healthcare documentation and decision making. Can you break down a little bit about why it might be so dangerous?
Well, again, it goes back to that it is garbage in, garbage out. So we can use the note example again. If I give it too general of information, it will make things up because it'll just
Mm.
take the examples it's seen before and create a note that will have no specific information about your patient. The big issue ends up being that when we start relying on these tools, because it's just a tool, too much, if we start anthropomorphizing it, right, we start making it seem more human than it is. You'll get the little eyebrow raising articles out there that's some Google engineer or someone says it can think and we're not far from it taking over everything and skynetting everything. And the reality is it doesn't think. It can't. It's just essentially a computer program with a ton of crap inside of it. But
Mm.
it doesn't have like what we would call like neural pathways, right? It can't change the way it thinks. And thinking is a very loose term. I mean, like it's more of like it can't change how it looks up information and presents it. You can use
Mm.
prompts to help it use a different pattern of response, but in the end, it's only responsive to the prompt you get it or you give
Mm.
it. I'm sorry.
But I mean that makes a lot of sense, especially since some of the research that is coming out is through the use of a healthcare provider supervising the use. And if you are
Mhm.
supervising the use, you can help the person, can help the client or the patient develop the voice that is coming back out to you. Voice. You can the text, the language that is coming back out to that person so that there is much less of a risk of these hallucinations and potentially harmful hallucinations. I mean, there are lawsuits because people have ended their lives with the
Yeah.
use of some of these chatbots. So,
Mhm.
in real terms, how is AI or these LLMs currently being used in therapy practices? Things like note generation, billing, client messaging, things like that.
Yeah. I think in the specifics of like therapy and medicine, AI is being used to record a session. So it's just recording. I mean, it's any other recording software. And then it'll transcribe it and then generate a summary based off what it can transcribe. Um, so if it misinterprets words or sentences or anything like that, it can struggle. A lot of these LLMs are not great in other languages other than English.
Mm,
That's the primary push, or has been, at least in the United States. Now there are other countries and other developers, but our big, what we call the big four, so you have OpenAI, you have Google, Meta, and XAI, what we know as Grok. Now there are other ones like the Chinese developed Deep Thought. No, that's not right.
I know that I've played with
I
Claude,
think it's DeepSeek. That's what it's called.
DeepSeek. I've
Yeah.
used Claude, which is I can't remember which company Claude belongs to, but then it's hard to know which ones of these companies because there's a bunch of smaller companies as well that are being embedded in some of our EHRs and EMRs. And don't worry for folks, that's why this is a series. There's an entire episode where I go through each most popular EHR to show you how these tools are being used, in addition to you being able to get a CEU for that. So if you want a CEU for that, remember head over to 2xlabs.org. But wonder about larger healthcare environments, hospitals, insurance companies, telehealth platforms. What are we not seeing as providers?
I think we're seeing some attempts to I want to say replace, I think that's the ultimate goal of some of these organizations is
Mm,
they would like to replace like a high paid or highly trained and licensed professional, right? We do recognize, and I think in tech they recognize it too, is that we have a huge lack of providers in in every specialization, from mental
yes.
health to medicine to everything. Um, it is an issue. So there is a push to try to use these LLMs, these large language models, to fill in the gap some way. Can we to show what is being used for? It's that kind of another tricky slippery slope kind of thing. I would say most insurance companies are using it to create like documentation. So they're when you call in and or say they're recording, I have seen that a lot of them are now using like AI to create like notes.
Mm,
Um, so it records the conversation and then it listens to it and it interprets it as best it can to transcribe it, and then it takes the transcription and it will attempt to summarize it. So if someone who is in the like an insurance call center, they probably don't have the training or the expertise to correct the note that
mm,
AI might be generating. Just because they're paid and trained to answer the phone and run off a
yeah,
script. They're
right.
typically not paid to make decisions or interpret anything.
Mm,
The other side of it is that some insurance companies have been caught using AI to just mass deny claims. So that's the
yeah.
dangerous side of it, right? Is the AI will only do what you tell it to do. but they can just point at the AI and go, well, the AI did it. Well, you told it what to do. You told it to deny 90% of claims if they don't meet some sort of criteria. But if people meet the criteria and the AI misinterprets it because, it could hallucinate, it
Hmm.
could not recognize a pattern and then just try to make a thing up, right? That's what hallucinations are. It's a lack of pattern recognition from the LLM. Doesn't know what to do with the data, so it just makes something up.
Right. So it's going to err on the side of the original directive as
Right.
opposed to being able to find the nuance like a human could. And
Yep.
this is, I mean, you and I have had our dinner table conversations. This is one of my primary fears about a lot of these note-taking language learning model systems that are
Mhm.
being offered in our electronic health record systems, is that that information will be collected and then used against our people to be able to have them access deeply needed services, mental health, sexual health, uh, anything medical, that any of that information could be used against them. And as you said earlier in our conversation, that making money is a big part of the reason this is happening.
Right.
So I think it's really important for our people listening to know where our data is going when we use these AI features in our EHRs and EMRs, who can access it and for how long.
Right. And I mean, that's a big one. So, I mean, here's the good news that there we use we can use, I think, simple practice as a decent example. Or an EHR I'm familiar with, that essentially a lot of these companies are like, for lack of a better term, they're renting the model, right? But the data stays within their ecosystem because they still have to meet all the privacy laws that exist in the United States, Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, and most other countries have some sort of um, legal protections around like personal health information. So that is the good news, right? So how they approach it has to comply with those regulations. So the best way to kind of figure it out, where the data is going, who's accessing it, and why, is to read the terms of services of any application you use, and they usually will have it either in an addendum if it's an
Hmm.
add-on service to like an EHR,
Hmm.
and we can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the at the time of this recording, I don't believe there's like an AI forward EHR where it's completely geared around the use of like an LLM.
Yeah,
I think they're
not
mostly
at this point, not yet.
right. I mean, as like I said, as of the date of this recording, I would say it's not. I think most what we're seeing right now is add-ons to existing products, which I think is
Hmm.
okay. Um, because now we're talking about companies that are already familiar with, in the United States, they're familiar with HIPAA compliance. So they're already well aware that they need to comply with it from front to back. And they can't just have you sign that right away because you can't make that decision for your clients.
That's
So
right.
you can, yeah. And that's a big one. But
Whenever
again,
I just want to come back to the
mhm,
I do want to come back to the idea that they have to put it in their terms of service. As I've
mhm,
been uh going through the terms of service in some of these more popular electronic health record systems, many of them do, but many of them do not make it easy to understand for clinicians. And then there are some of them that hide it entirely, and there isn't much information. And like I said earlier, folks who are listening, you'll get all this information in another episode, but that's I think one of my concerns as a clinician is that I often do not have enough time to fine tooth comb go through one of the terms of services, especially every time it changes.
mhm,
And uh, there are these companies that do not. I mean, Simple Practice. I mean, we are kind of using it. They're not sponsoring this video. We're using it as one of the better, in quotation marks. One, they have a video about. Not only have they put it very clearly in their terms of service, but they also have a video about what it does, where the information is stored, and how it gets used. But not all these companies are that transparent. So, what
mhm.
questions should we be asking these vendors before we turn on any of these AI tools?
I mean, I think the main questions are to ask who owns the data that
Mm,
you enter. who has access, and how is the data used. And if you're either not comfortable or can't understand the answer to that question, then it's okay to just walk away
Mm-hmm.
and say no, like not opt into those tools. Um, most of these EHRs that are including an AI product, it's an add-on, it's an extra. Because why wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
they? It costs a lot of money to run a data center for that kind of stuff. Even if they're offloading some of the work into like a secure enclave
Mm-hmm.
within like say OpenAI or Copilot,
Can you
that
define what
that's
a
that's
secure enclave means?
sure. I mean, just think of it as like a fenced yard, right?
Mm,
It's just an area where the data is stored where it's being processed.
okay.
So
I
to maybe put it in a better perspective is that the company has say, hey, we're going to rent this space, and this space is ours and ours alone, and we're going to pay extra for
mm,
that. And we needed to meet these criteria to keep security within compliance because again a lot of these companies, especially health record systems, even down to your individual practice, can be audited for
mhm.
HIPAA compliance, and if you're not meeting it, it can be really steep fines.
So you're describing a renting of essentially like a data storage unit with different lock requirements based on whatever that storage is going to be used for.
Correct.
Okay.
So
So
you have access to the greater model, the model is just, it's the thing that processes all the data that's fed into it. So
it's the strainer.
ChatGPT, we'll use ChatGPT as a great example. ChatGPT is a massive model. It's tons and tons, as much information as they can shove into it. And they're
Hmm.
always trying to add more, right? Um, and now they're running into the issue of they're struggling to add data that's not tainted by AI. Right? So that's also another issue. The other side of that is, so if I rent a model or
Mhm,
lease or however basically if I'm licensing a model from OpenAI, I'm just getting the
mhm.
model and then it's whatever data I put into it.
Mm. So keeping these concerns all in mind, what are some of the most common mistakes healthcare providers make with cybersecurity in general?
Uh, let's see here. Oh boy, that's a big one. Um, so I'll try to break this down. This is a lot. Now, this is not just, okay, this is mostly healthcare, but this is a lot of other people too. But in the realm of healthcare providers, the biggest mistakes that folks make, I would say the number one is they use a personal computer for business needs.
Mm,
So they're saving patient data on a computer that they're accessing, like a personal email
mm,
or a computer that someone else may use beyond them.
I see.
That can be a big no-no. A good thing to know is if you use any kind of cloud products, to boil that out, if you use like Office 365 or you use um, Google Docs or anything like those, once you download something to your computer, it's no longer protected by the business agreement that you have with them.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the number one vectors for spreading what we call malware, so viruses, Trojans, ransomware, so that's where they encrypt your data and hold it for ransom,
Hmm.
uh, or getting phished. So now not only is your personal computer compromised, any patient data that was on that computer is also compromised.
Mm,
And when you have a compromised computer that contained PHI or PII, you're required to notify. You're required to notify the authorities. You're also required to notify any patients, and usually you notify all of them because you don't know
hmm.
whose stuff was on there. Because much of the time, once a device has been compromised, you don't just clean it off and keep going. You usually wipe it and start over. That's the only way to
Mm,
guarantee that the device is clean and secure again.
yeah. Right. I I I'm thinking as you were describing it, the many agencies I've worked for, I think about all of those things and how many times things got saved directly to the computer,
Mhm.
and how many times there was just and just a lack of management of information. And
Mhm.
again, that's why I wanted you to come and talk to everyone because this is not something we're trained on HIPAA. We're trained on what personal health information is. But especially as technology has changed, we as providers are not generally trained on how does that change and how do we need to be thinking about how this information changes, especially if you're working in a solo practice or if you're working in a private practice outside of hospital systems or outside of larger agencies, because they have the money to bring in a trainer like you to break it down and break down all that information. So what are some of the biggest red flags you've seen when it comes to AI integration in healthcare software?
Here. So the red flags that I see with AI integration into healthcare software is when it's claiming to use AI, again, an LLM, to replace trained and licensed professionals in any capacity. Again, LLMs cannot think or reason and oftentimes will hallucinate in dangerous ways. So they can provide, here's an example, they can provide the benefits of fasting to people with eating disorders.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that many of us who do work with eating disorders saw all of the lawsuits that came out with the organization, the National Eating Disorder Association, NEDA, who had fired all of their essentially their entire staff for their call center and replaced it with a chatbot. And that started offering
Dieting advice.
dieting advice to people with eating disorders. So absolutely huge red flags. And it absolutely goes back to what we were talking about with those hallucinations, that it will make up information around some context it's given, especially in places when not enough context is given or not enough nuance is given. And sometimes, a lot of times, only humans can really tease apart that nuance.
Yeah. Because there's context that a chatbot, especially just a text chatbot or even a voice chatbot, it's not going to catch.
Yeah,
Because all it
absolutely.
is doing is listening to the words, transcribing it, and then interpreting it
Yes.
against other known patterns.
It's not
They don't think,
it's
they
not
don't
reading
reason.
tone of voice. It's not looking at facial expression. It's not looking at body language.
And can you
It
train it to recognize a tone of voice? Sure. But how contextual is that to everyone?
exactly. How
I tend to
culturally
have a very
sensitive.
deadpan manner. I would say most software probably interprets that as depression,
Mhm.
whereas I'm
Absolutely.
fine.
So, can you give us some examples of security breaches or privacy violations that could have been prevented with simple practices taken by healthcare providers?
Yeah. So here's the deal. Nobody's an expert, and I'm an expert, and I'm still not an expert. I can be fooled just like anybody else and have been.
Mhm.
I'm human enough to admit that. Uh, but the biggest things that you can protect that could prevent security breaches is when people reuse passwords and they don't use multi-factor authentication. And a lot of people resist that because, oh, it takes me 2 steps to log into a thing. And sometimes you're doing it over and over and over again every day. I get that. I really do. And there are ways around it. So there's a lot of information out there. And every tool, every security, offering is different. But
Mm.
if you just quit reusing passwords and used MFA, so multi-factor authentication, the little codes on your phone. I would avoid texting if you can. Sometimes you can't, and it's the only option, and that's okay. You do the best you can, right? That would prevent a lot of logins because they can't. A threat actor can't then just get your username and password from some other previous breach. Which, if you live in the United States, your information's out there in some form or another at some point.
Mm.
It may not be current, but it is something's out there. And all it takes is, there was a breach and it's a password you haven't changed in 10 years and there's no multi-factor authentication and they're in. And they can use that everywhere because if a password's been reused everywhere, everything you've ever logged into with that email address is now compromised. And the hard part is now, sometimes in this day and age, there could be hundreds of websites to go in and try to fix.
Yes.
So, opening email attachments, that's a big one, especially from if you're, again, if you're on a personal computer and you're trying to do business activities on it, you shouldn't, but don't open email attachments. period, the end.
Mhm.
Unless you are very much expecting where it's from. That gets people more often than not. And then something really nasty occurs with those is uh, if you're logged into any kind of like work system on a personal computer, or you're logged into work stuff on personal stuff on a work computer, it goes both ways. They could steal what we call token theft, and that's
Mm.
real technical. But essentially, what that means is if you're logged into, say, your work's Microsoft account and it's secured with multi-factor, and you're good to go, and you're
Mm.
like, I'm perfectly secure. Not anymore. Now they grab the signed authentication between those two factors and then use that to log in elsewhere. And I would say most organizations don't have security controls in place to prevent that or help against it. So that's a real tough one. And that's what we call phishing. So
Mm.
phishing is when they cast a real big net. So if you ever get an email and you're like, what is this from? And why is my name spelled wrong? And oh, there's an attachment. Don't open it.
Mm-mm.
It's a phishing
The
campaign.
the one that I get all the time is the Geek Squad one,
Right.
and or Geek Nerd Squad, and
Yeah.
my
They
name's all
try
kind
to
of
pretend
weirdly
to be
spelled.
s yeah, they try to pretend to be a trusted organization so that you'll click it. But if you're not expecting a thing, then again, it's take a deep breath before you do anything and think about, "Oh, I know Geek Squad, but I haven't bought anything from them.
Mhm.
I don't have any. Why were they contacting me?"
I have a husband who will tell me, "I don't need the Geek Squad." So,
The other
I
side of it
think
is oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Sure. So another one is not keeping your software updated. That's a big
Mm.
one. Windows and Mac pretty much are, if you allow them, they'll automatically update. But you also have other applications installed in your computer most of the time. And if those aren't auto updating, then you have to take some time to update those software. I would say most internet browsers, so like Chrome, Edge, Firefox, they typically will automatically update themselves. But it's
Mm.
always good to just kind of check. If you're running on a Microsoft computer and you have Microsoft software, typically it's updating itself. But, if you have any weird little third party applications, sometimes those can be a real problem. Uh, any of that. So, and then the last one's kind of like a lack of cybersecurity training.
Mhm.
There are a lot of free resources out there, and I'll provide some. So a good one is to know what phishing is and how to spot it, and just kind of update yourself on that every few months. Even if you just put a reminder in your calendar and said, "All right, it's the holidays. I don't have a lot of clients. It's a great time to do that. Summer, also great time to do that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It's when you're not as packed with clients, and it's a good time to do a little refresher." And again, there's a lot of free resources out there that I'll
Mhm.
provide.
Then we will put those in the show notes and on 2xlabs.org. I do
Hmm.
want to shift a little bit to
Sure.
uh, so that we spend some time. I mean, this is the thing that I think about all the time. It's why I don't use any of these tools built into my electronic health record system, because I do work with high risk groups. So, for high risk groups like queer people, people seeking gender affirming care, abortion care, or those in marginalized communities, how can AI tools in healthcare be used against them?
I mean, we're already seeing it. Uh, much of this is AI tools are being used to generate misleading videos and information, social
Mm.
media posts, and pretty much anything else. Uh, Data collection. So when you use like a public facing LLM, so if you just go into chat, anyone can use ChatGPT at any given time for free.
Yes.
But remember, it's connected to some sort of login. It's not anonymous. Using a thing like tools like a VPN or uh, the anonymous, what is it? The incognito modes on browsers that won't protect you from that kind of stuff because again, you're logged in, so it's identifying you anyways.
Hmm.
Um, I would say that's the biggest misconception of a VPN is that it makes you anonymous. It doesn't. If you are logged in at your home on your Facebook account in the browser you're using, and then you turn on your VPN to Facebook, you just jump to a new location, but it's still you. It's still attached
Hmm.
to your user, your login. and I think some of the other harm that we're seeing with these is that, again, it's the data collection. So the more data the bad actors have, the easier it is to harm any community that's marginalized. Um, I can use, I'll use Grok from XAI. It went from kind of a mediocre LLM to a mediocre Nazi LLM overnight because
Yes.
its directive was changed by leadership to be more conservative or more right wing,
Mm-hmm.
And again, AI just does what you tell it to. So all of a
Yes, it
sudden,
does.
the content it puts out is more right leaning instead of
Yes.
like a more neutral, right? It gets flavored and colored by those perspectives because you feed it
Mm-hmm.
more of that data. You start telling it to respond more of that way. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just a model. It's just software. It'll do what you tell it to do.
Yeah.
And that can
Garbage
be
in,
dangerous.
garbage out.
That can be dangerous for people who aren't a marginalized community
Yes,
because they
absolutely.
get poison the mind, right? Like I think that's a big one we don't think about is the information that we consume.
Mm-hmm. And we could. That's a whole.
That's a whole different conversation.
It is a whole episode. It's a whole one. So I do really want to give folks listening some practical next steps.
Sure.
So if you had to give therapists and healthcare providers 3 rules for staying safe when using AI tools, what would they be?
Be thoughtful with your prompts, and ask the LLM to ask you. So have the LLM in your prompt ask you follow-up questions. So again, it's like,
Mm,
let's create a SOAP note. Ask me questions that you need to know and don't create this until we're done.
mm-hmm,
So then it will fill in the blanks for you a lot better because again, it's ingested so much information that it can it can derive and go, okay, I know exactly what's in a soap note, and you've given me the diagnosis. Okay, I need more information.
mm-hmm,
Um, you know, and if it asks you what's the patient's name, what should you do? You say, hey, I want to keep my patient anonymous, so we'll just call them patient.
mm-hmm.
That's it. It'll just fill in that. It'll just say, great, understood.
So more
Uh,
context. Ask it to require more context from you as well.
Mhm. Yeah. In your prompt, tell it directly to ask you more questions until it's satisfied that it has enough to create the note that you need. So instead of filling in the blanks on all of the criteria of what a SOAP note is, again, we're just
Mm-hmm,
using this as the example, it will then say, oh, I need to ask questions of you for all of the criteria so that I can fill in the blanks accurately. That's a
mm-hmm,
great use of the tool. And then it's on you as the provider. So this is where you have to verify the output. So this is the second thing. You're the trained professional. You have years of education, years of experience. Your license is on the line,
mm-hmm.
period, the end. You should be reviewing everything that you're willing to bet your reputation and your license on. So verify the output, read it twice.
Yes.
And
Verify.
then third, any AI product that you're willing to use in a clinical situation, read the terms of service. And I'll give you a really easy way to summarize it.
Mm-hmm,
Take the terms of service, copy and paste the whole document. If you download it into a PDF or some other thing, that's great. You can just feed that into something like ChatGPT and say, hey, this is a terms of service for a product. Can you give me the bullet points, right? Can you give me a summary in language that I can understand? And if you have
mm,
specific questions, once it has that document, whether it was a copy and paste, which you may have to copy and paste multiple things. So again, this is what we call prompt engineering. You say, hey, ChatGPT, essentially, you say, hey, I'm going to give you the terms of service document for this service. I have to paste it multiple times because it's large. Wait until I am done. And then you tell it
mm,
when you're done after you finish pasting it in. Again, if you can download it as a document, it's even better.
mm-hmm,
But again, so in the terms of AI, right, or in a large language model, you can ask, once those terms are loaded in, you can ask those questions. Hey, how is the information used for LLMs?
mm,
In relation to the product I've told you about, right? You can make it conversational with these bots. They're good at understanding that. So
mm-hmm,
think of it as something that you can use. That's where these tools are excellent. I use them for this purpose and then I verify it,
mm-hmm. Yes.
Hey, where did you find that information? This seems a little weird. Oh, I
Mhm.
found it on page 97 of this agreement. Great. There's 1,000 pages, and now I don't have to dig through all of it. I go to
Yes.
97 and I understand, oh, okay, this is what it's talking about. It was weird.
Yeah. I think you are highlighting what these models can do and what they actually do really well. And
Mhm.
that is what I typically use them for as well, is I take a lot of information and I have it organize it for me. Or take a lot of information and summarize it for me, because that's what it's really good at. It's good at taking language and organizing it. It does that very quickly. And that is, if we continue to remind ourselves that this is not a human, this is not actual intelligence, that we don't get distracted by how a lot of these companies want to market to us directly, I think we can really help ourselves stay focused on what it can actually do. What should providers never do when it comes to AI and client/patient data?
Never provide PHI or PII,
Mm-hmm.
especially to public LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, any
Let's
of them.
remind them what that is. That is names, birth dates, social security numbers, any
Anything that could be,
details,
yeah. So
location, any of that
Per-
stuff.
Right. So let's define it as it is personal health information. It is anything to
Mhm.
do with the health of the patient. That's
Yes.
note, that's diagnoses, anything. Personally identifiable information. So PII, that
Mhm.
is the numbers behind you, your address, your phone number, your email, where you work, who your spouses are, who your friends are. All
Mm.
that should be removed as well. If you need to give the AI, the LLM some context, say
Mhm.
you can use person A, person B,
Mhm.
employer A, employer B.
Yes.
It's that kind of stuff. So that's how you anonymize what you're giving the AI. You have to make those switches, because it doesn't know. Now, on the other side of that, if you're using an AI tool that is built in to your EHR, that is following HIPAA compliance, you can use the personally identifiable and the personal health information inside of that specific tool. And here's the weird rub. If you find out that a certain tool is based on another one, that protection does not extend to the public version of that tool. For instance, this is not true. I don't know this for a fact. We'll use simple practice again, uses OpenAI's model in their AI solution, their product that they're offering you, those protections that Simple Practice offers you in your business agreement, it does not apply to OpenAI. If you go to ChatGPT, it does not apply.
It is not BAA inception.
Correct. It is not. It is your BAA. So that's your business agreement with other companies that they say, yes, we are HIPAA compliant. We will maintain HIPAA compliance on our side. You still have to do your job. You can't download
Mhm.
information. You can't send it through public email. You have to do all that stuff, right? That does not apply to any services that they may have a contract with.
Mhm.
That the business agreement is only between you and your EHR, not between you and everyone that they deal with. They have
This
their
is
own
just
agreement. Isn't it
this is
weird?
just
Contract
yeah,
law? Awful. I hate it.
it
And I deal
that's
with it
why
every day.
not an attorney, and this is why. But I think like this
I'm
is what
not a lawyer and nor is this legal advice.
correct. But the this again brings up the question of how do we protect ourselves, especially if if we're using an AHR that we've been using
Mhm.
and they've introduced these AI features and they're AI features we can't turn off. What do we do?
So, again, if you can't turn them off, read the terms of service.
Mhm.
Figure out who owns the data, how is the data being used, and who has access to it. If you are comfortable with the answers to those three questions, then you can continue using the product as is. You're not required to use the AI features that are baked in unless it is fully being derived around those AI features. But a lot
Mhm.
of the times you have an option because the other side of it is that your patients also have to opt in
Mhm.
and they can opt out at any time. They can say, no, I don't want AI listening to my stuff and recording everything and analyzing anything for you. I want you, the trained professional I'm paying, to do it for me. And that's an okay answer. That is totally acceptable. Now, if you read the terms of service and you do not agree with it, your only option is you can one, try to opt out of the services by contacting their support. If you want to continue using the tool, the EHR, we'll just use that as an example, or you will need to move to a new product. And that's the crappy rub, right? Because there are many companies that are AI first. But here's the fun fact: 73%, and that number is actually going up. One of the last articles I read was almost 90% of all companies that are trying to use AI in their company have stopped those initiatives flat out, because what they found out is that those tools don't help them make money. They only make money for the people offering the tools. Because these tools don't think, they
Yes.
cannot replace a human being effectively.
No.
Can they supplement? 100%. They can be very good at supplementing. Can they
Yes.
replace a human being's instinct, intuition, and training and knowledge and experience? No.
No. Especially those of us who work with humans directly
100%.
to help them. So if someone wants to evaluate their current systems for security and AI risk, where should they start? Obviously, terms of service. If it's not clear, I mean, obviously that's a red flag. What are you saying, that we need to contact these companies and make them be more transparent?
That's an okay place to start. The other side is you vote with your dollars, right? So if enough people leave these products, and the reason, every time that you leave a service, what does it say? What does it ask you? Why? It asks you why. So be specific in that. Your terms of service did not state my three main questions: who owns the data, how is it being used, and who has access to it. It doesn't even define it. If it doesn't define it, run, because you don't know where that data is being stored or fed or anything. And they may be HIPAA compliant. Let's be real. They may just have not put it in the terms of service because they didn't even think about it. That's the other side. Some of these EHR tools are very small companies. They may only have a handful of developers, and a little bit of leadership. They may not be like, a company like Simple Practice or Therapy Notes, who has full teams.
Right.
And even they're not mega corporations. They're not huge.
That's why
you look at a company like
I had you on this show, because there isn't a lot of people who understand the nuance and the crossover of these two worlds, the healthcare world and the engineering world.
How would you know,
they're
right?
very different and have very different requirements of us.
So if you're going to evaluate any professional tool that you're using that says they offer HIPAA compliance, just know that you should have a BAA in place with them, even if it's just part of their terms of service. So when you sign up for a service, you agree to the terms of service. And that may include the BAA is just baked in. Microsoft is that way. The BAA is just built in. It's baked in. Because they say, you know what, it's easier for us to just offer like a blanket compliance thing instead of a bunch of different products. But how you use those products is up to you. And, they're guaranteed their end of it. And then it's up to you to do the rest. And that's okay. Because again, it's just an agreement between you and the company. And if that BAA is baked into the terms of service, that's okay. Because you're still, you and the company you're agreeing to do business with have an arrangement and agreement.
Okay, that's good to know. As we wrap up, what is one thing you wish every provider understood about AI and cybersecurity in healthcare?
Stop and think. Just take a pause, take a beat, analyze what is in front of you, and ask yourself questions if you're not sure. If it just makes you scratch your head for a second, or it's unexpected. Is it from someone you know? Is it something you were expecting? Would you trust it from a total stranger? And funny enough, does it fit one of the idioms? If it's too good to be true, it is. Nothing is ever truly free. Facebook, free to use. Who's the product? You are.
We are. Our data that they actively
Your data
sell.
and your eyeballs are the product.
So, how can our listeners find this final question? How can our listeners keep learning about this without getting overwhelmed?
Be okay with not being an expert. You need to know your business and its needs, and that can be hard to figure out. It's okay to take small steps if you're doing nothing now. So if you're one of the people that I described that you've been reusing the same password for the last 10 years and you don't have multi-factor authentication in place, and you're using a personal computer and one of 100 other things, one step at a time. How do we eat an elephant? One bite. So it's all about priority, and it's going to be based on your business needs. But my top 5 are strong passwords with multi-factor authentication. That will save your bacon in 90% of the time. Learn what phishing is and how to recognize it. And so that for everyone who's listening or watching, that's phishing. That's PH, like the band.
You just took me back.
Have backups of your data. If you have stuff on your computer and nowhere else, you're toast if that computer gets compromised. That could be all your client records. That could be your banking records. That could be everything. So have a backup somewhere, at least one, if not 2. We always recommend the 3-2-1 method. So 3 copies of your data in 2 different mediums, and 1 is offsite. Because if you just back up to a hard drive and your house burns to the ground while you're not home, computer, all it's gone.
Gone.
So the cloud counts. Cloud's offsite. The other medium can be, like I said, those little USB hard drives. They're usually real cheap, and you can just plug it in, do a backup, and then unplug it. Because if your computer gets compromised and the hard drive is plugged in, the hard drive is compromised too. Or if the hard drive dies or the computer dies and takes the hard drive with it, you could lose everything. Been there, done that. Erika can tell you about the 17 terabyte disaster.
Oh, that was a sad day in the Miley household. So I'm those of you who are still listening, thank you for listening all the way to the end. But we're going to give you a bunch of resources, websites, and we're creating a checklist for you so that you can feel like you have you can use this resource again and again to be able to protect yourself. Aaron, really, thank you for being willing to come on the show, help all these healthcare providers out. We need more people like you who can translate all of this stuff for us.
We need more people like you. Oh my God, the world's on fire, my friends. And it's okay. You got this, and we got you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening in the end. Remember, you can get a CEU for listening to this. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, on YouTube. But to get that handy-dandy CEU, you have to be a member at 2xlabs.org. TWO, the letter X, labs.org. And we will see you next time.